Yes, that's right. It's Medicine Ball with your boy LS3. And if you ain't in shape, at least your brain should be. Welcome to another week of the Medicine Ball podcast, where we focus on giving your brain a six-pack by exercising your mind. Now, exercising your mind means that we're going to challenge ourselves. Like the way we think, the way we respond, the way that we react to things that are going on in our life. Now, I realize that can be something that's challenging, but I'm going to give you the very first step, and that's to look at things from an unbiased point of view. Now, exercising your mind isn't a cure-all. You will still have adversities and things that you'll need to work out, but it will allow you to go into situations and relationships with more love, grace, and get more of an overall enjoyment out of life. Now, before we go any further, I'm not a psychologist and I am not a psychiatrist. I am, however, someone who has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder level 1 for 20 years. I got to a point where I was looking at the person I was becoming versus the person I wanted to be, and that initiated me looking at my mental health responsibly. These are my stories, what I've gone through to get to where I'm at, and how I went about it. So whether or not you're diagnosed or you know someone who has a mental health illness, it doesn't matter. Pull up a seat, kick up your feet. This is your home, no judgment zone. Welcome Ladies and gentlemen and ladies, it's your boy LS3. Welcome to the Medicine Ball podcast, where we focus on giving your brain a six-pack by exercising your mind. Today's episode, season 7, episode 14, tunnel vision. Locking in when life gets loud. Let's get right into today's episode. So today we're talking about something that every successful person eventually learns, and that's the ability to focus when everything around them seems chaotic. The title of today's episode is Tunnel Vision, Locking in when life gets loud. Now, I want to make sure that I say this. We're not talking about a type of tunnel vision that causes you to ignore important people or important opportunities, but the kind of tunnel vision that helps you stay locked in on your purpose, even when distractions are pulling you in every direction. Life doesn't usually become more chaotic, and I'm learning this as I get older. Life doesn't become more chaotic. What's happening is, in most cases, it becomes more demanding. There are more responsibilities. There are more opinions. When it comes to these phones, there's more notifications, more pressure, whether that pressure is legitimate pressure or pressure that's unnecessarily that we put on ourselves, right? What happens is the people who continue to move forward are often the ones who learn to focus despite what's going on, despite the noise. And I want to make sure I'm calling it noise because we're going to talk a little bit about, what these distractions can be. All right. It's just like I talked about in previous episodes, pretty much from season 1 on. Life is about your capacity, expanding your capacity, and getting opportunities in to practice expanding your capacity. And it just a lot of the time depends on what your mindset is when these opportunities present themselves. And I'm talking to myself here. As y'all know, a lot of times just doing the podcast is therapy for me. Hopefully it helps somebody, but it's also therapy for me. So I'm talking to myself. So I'm going to break it down. We're going to talk about a couple of things. Today we're going to discuss identifying distractions and white noise, classifying distractions so we know how to deal with them, developing a tunnel vision without becoming isolated. This is important. A lot of times I think people take tunnel vision or focusing or locking in as meaning you have to isolate. From a biblical or spiritual standpoint, that's not the way to go about it. We're going to talk about moving forward effectively regardless of your circumstances. And I'm going to throw a little spiritual perspective in there, maintain it to noise. So without any more waiting, let's get right into it, starting with segment 1, recognizing white noise. So one of the biggest reasons people lose momentum is because they mistake noise for importance. And I want y'all to kind of follow me on this, because this is going to definitely come back when we come to a spiritual aspect. And when I start talking about, some of the things that I've done in my life that I didn't know it at the time, but helped me to kind of be a little bit better when it comes to locking in, right? Let's talk about white noise. So white noise, and this is just a loose definition, is anything that consumes your attention without contributing to your purpose. It's not limited to, but it can include the number one thing, this thing right here, social media and scrolling. A lot of times that leads to comparison. A lot of times that leads to you looking at people's victories, none of their losses. And, it's human nature to look at sometimes how we are in relation to fellow humans. Social media and scrolling, if you don't have the right mindset, that's going to be something that's going to contribute to white noise. All right. Constant news consumption, bro. I'm my daddy's son, man. I remember, it don't even seem like that long ago, bro, but I used to be like, man, why is this man always watching news? Like, why is this man always watching Fox or CNN or MSNBC? My dad's a Vietnam vet, so he watch all of them. We can get to that in another episode, but you got to know how all parties think about you. But I used to be like, why is this man watching? Bruh, when I tell you, if you go through my YouTube feed right now, it's a lot of news in there. Now, in my dad's case, he's so slick, bro. He got on the NVIDIA train kind of early. And, shout out to my sister as well. Netflix, a couple of these things kind of early. And so I don't think that me and my dad, because me and my dad, as me getting 40, I always say this, are just not kind of coming to a place where it's a manly respect there. Not to say that I disrespected my father, but I think that he looks at me as a grown man that he's proud of, right? But I don't think at the time he knew that I was in on stocks. So if he would have been like, yo, check these stocks out or something like that, I'd have been on top of it. But long story short, constant news consumption, that's something that I have to work on myself. But I can't remember what show. Was it Family Matters or something like that, where the intro was like, nothing's good on news anyway. You know what I mean? Got to be careful of constant news consumption. Here's the other part of that. Not everything is just politics or what's going on in America or wars or things like that. There's other things that count as news, whether it be celebrities, quote unquote, entertainment, sports. All of that is news. Consumption, constant consumption. I've spoken about this previously. You got to be aware of what you're taking in when it comes to fighting some of these. This is where some of these thoughts come from, and some of these spiraling and racing thoughts come from. It's our constant consumption. Unsolicited opinions. And my mom called me lion-hearted. You have to be careful, right? There's a lot of opinions, right? There's an old saying about opinions, which I'm not going to say, right? But there's a lot of opinions. You have to be careful of what opinions you're going to take weight of and actually do action on. I give y'all an example. I'm going to try to give y'all this example quick. As you may or may have not known, that a majority of my time I'm at my Florida residence, and I'm in Southwest Florida, and there's some interesting people here. My neighbor was incarcerated for maybe 15, 16 years. He's an interesting guy. I think that he still needs some help in like integrating into society and socializing. He's socially awkward, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. I've spoken a million times to this thing that God has given me, to where it don't matter how awkward you are. And to be honest, the more awkward, the more likely that I'm going to draw you to me, or you're going to want to be my friend, bro. I don't know how else to say it, right? So with that being said, man, bro, every time I walk the dogs, take the garbage out, go out in the pool on the lanai, I got to peek my head, because if this dude see me, he going to go out of his way to try to talk to me. Now, I get it. We're neighbors, but this dude also got a neighbor right across the street to the other side of him. And I don't see him all up extra talking to them. And you know what I'm saying? So I get it. Long story short, he got a lot of time on his hands, right? You know what I'm saying? He's still trying to get back into society. He's able to maintain his yard in a certain way out of an abundance of time and a need to do something. I try to maintain my yard a certain way, but a lot of the times it's based on my schedule and if it's a 103 heat index or not. I got some patches that I'm working on, putting side down, et cetera, et cetera. And my lady tells me this all the time, right? This man loves saying something about my lawn or my weed whacking. You know what I mean? And like, it's not bad, but as somebody who could go, for him being somebody who can go out there and weed whack 30 minutes an hour every single day, to the point where he's taking videos of it, and just, mine is not up to par. And my lady will be like, yo, bro, why do you even listen to what this dude say about the maintenance of a yard, when even right now, as I look out the window, his screen is so weird. They let their cats out of the side of their house through the screen window, but his screen from the side of his window is just laying in the yard. He got a gas can laying out in the yard. I'm gonna tell another story about his dogs tearing through my screen, Lanai, but it's just like probably not worth it for me to take the opinions that he has about my household and what I got going on with any weight. Now, do I sometimes get annoyed and still do it? Absolutely, but be careful of unsolicited opinions. That's white noise, right? Workplace drama. I can't think of anywhere that we spend more than home than at our jobs. You know what I'm saying? Depending on what you're doing and the commute and everything, chances are you're probably spending more time week by week committed to your job and the people you work with than your family or whoever's in your household. All right. Comparing yourself to others. I spoke on that. Worrying about things outside of your control. I have an episode talking about the sphere of your control. These are just things that are white noise, right? The issue with white noise is that it feels productive because it occupies your mind. It occupies your thoughts. But being busy, even if your mind's busy, that's not the same as making progress. You got to ask yourself, what am I spending time thinking about that doesn't move my life forward? What am I spending time thinking about that doesn't move my life forward? All right. Sometimes our biggest distraction isn't a person, it's our own thoughts. I know for me, it could go either way, but even if it is a person, it's because of my thoughts about the person. So, it's real easy to get tricked into spending more energy worrying about potential problems than pursuing actual solutions. All right. Tunnel vision begins when you learn to separate what deserves your attention from what demands your attention, right? And a lot of this is very relative to what we were talking about when it comes to intrusive thoughts, mental capacity, and so forth and so on, all right? You got to learn to separate what actually deserves your attention from what is demanding your attention. Not everything that demands your attention needs your attention, all right? Let's move on into segment 2, classifying your distractions. I mentioned that I'm back in therapy, and something that I know to be true, but my therapist has kind of brought it back to my attention, is that when it comes to things that we're dealing with, their adversities, it's hard to combat them if we don't first identify them and define them. You know what I'm saying? You can't always do that, but it helps. So segment 2, we're going to move right into is classifying your distractions, right? Not all distractions are created equal. In order to manage them better, it helps to kind of categorize them, right? So I'm just going to give you guys like 3 categories. There's more categories than this, but this is just meant to be kind of like an outline of how you can categorize your distractions, right? So the category 1 is going to be external extractions. It has a definition of what it is within it. I love words like that. External, outside sources, right? This could be social media, phone notifications, negative people, gossip, constant interruptions. Now, again, I want to say this before we continue going too farther. Tunnel vision isn't about isolating yourself. It actually takes a little bit more effort because you still need to be able to identify stuff. Even with this, my pool temperature right now is 84 degrees, right? I have a thermostat that lets me see what the pool temp is without having to actually get in the pool. Kobe has gotten to the point where he knows where that thermostat is, and dogs be so locked in on our facial expressions and our body language because they can't speak to us that I think he can tell when I look at it and I see that joint over like 82 and my eyes might light up. He just gets crazy. So he want to go swimming, right? I told him, and I know he don't know, but I telling him and telling myself like, yo, bro, give me an hour. Let me knock this podcast out, handle some business. We going to go swimming. This man would not calm down. I had to eventually just close him out of the office because he was just bothering me. Now, I am, after I get finished recording this podcast, going to go out there and swim with my man. You know what I mean? But all of that to say is that a constant interruption? Is that white noise? Maybe, but go follow me online. Y'all can see my relationship with my dog. Nothing crazy, but it's just like he's darn near like an emotional support animal. Matter of fact, he is. it's very therapeutic for me. So yeah, it could be considered white noise, but it's a necessary distraction. All right. So be mindful of external distractions, but more importantly, be able to like look at these things with a little bit more effort instead of lazily classifying them. All right. These distractions are easier to identify because they like, you can physically see them. It's something tangible. It's something you can physically see, right? Let's go into category 2. These are internal distractions, right? Whew. These are often more and most dangerous. Fear, self-doubt, anxiety, overthinking, comparison, perfectionism. These things are all ideas. They're thoughts. Even the idea of fear and self-doubt and anxiety, these are just ideas. They're internal distractions, though, meaning that we're generating them, right? A lot of dreams, and even me, man, outside opposition can stop a lot of dreams and plans from happening, but a lot of times we're our own worst enemy. We're in the way of ourselves, all right? I'm gonna bring this back to a spiritual thing, and now, mind you, this is stuff that's going to happen. When we're talking about distractions and being locked in and tunnel vision, we're not going about things in a way that none of this stuff will happen, that we'll never have fear again, we'll never have anxiety. No, we're just learning to deal with it better, right? And if you're a believer, it's right there in the word. All right, let's go into category 3, necessary distractions. So this is kind of what I just was speaking to with Kobe. These are things that pull you away from your goal or your dreams temporarily, but they're still important. Health concerns. Your health is your wealth, boy. Family responsibilities. Emergencies, right? Because we know life be lifing, as they say. What else? We just talked about this last week. Rest and recovery. These aren't distractions to eliminate. These are things that you have to manage, right? Even me, one of these things that I wrote down was health concerns, right? I'm back in the gym, and I talked about this, I think, on the previous episode about like how to, or whenever I was talking about building capacity, but one of the things I mentioned was exercising, especially when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. Not just for your health, but for the type of discipline and fire it will instill in you, all right? These necessary distractions are to be managed in addition to your dreams and your other responsibilities, all right? Once you're able to know the difference between what's urgent and important and kind of categorize them, you can start to manage them better. You know, you have to kind of classify them correctly, and there's more ways you could classify. Come up with your own classifying. You know, loud, medium, low. You know what I'm saying? If you want to use it for like a volume thing, right? You know, me, when it comes to managing music, a lot of times the way that I, on a surface level, kind of manage my volumes and my sounds of my different generators and VSTs is the lead is kind of going to be the loudest thing for me. You know what I'm saying? The melody might kind of be the second loudest, but then I might mix it up and matching that second loudest, I put a counter melody. The bass line might be the lowest thing. You know what I mean? You have to break them up into whatever categories you can so that you can deal with them. Then you can stop treating every single interruption, every single noise, every single alert as the same. All right, let's get right into segment 3. Developing this tunnel vision, locking in, as I called it. Lens crafters, as I used to call them when I used to freestyle. Be like, yo, lens crafters, I'm focused, man. You feel what I mean? It means refusing to let reality distract you from your purpose. Refusal to let reality distract you from your purpose. That don't mean that you don't have to address it, right? But we have to be able to manage and address things and get back to what we're doing. You know what I mean? I told a story a while ago about the young man and the old man chopping down the wood, and the young man, I'm just giving a brief story, right? The young man keep looking over and saw the old man sitting down. So when he would turn back to chop his wood, and at the end, of course, he lost because he didn't realize that those necessary breaks or distractions, those distractions or breaks that old man was taking was him sharpening his axe, right? So those were things that were necessary, but that was something that was necessary, sharpening his axe in a wood cutting contest, but he addressed that and then got back to his purpose, right? Athletes do this, entrepreneurs, business owners, military personnel, high performers, all understand that focus and locking in is a skill. It's a skill. And just like anything else, and like I was speaking to earlier, you can develop these things, you know what I mean? Whether it be patience, whether it be understanding, empathy, and things of those nature by kind of identifying opportunities to practice it. All right. Here are just some very like brief practical ways that you could develop tunnel vision, right? Eliminate what you can, right? As I get older, bro, oh man, I got so many. This is how I know I'm getting older. I got so many stories. I remember I was a party promoter in Atlanta, and the way that I was plugged in between my connections and just the music industry, we was really involved in some big party promoting. And I will go along the lines and say from like 2008 to at least 2012, we were some of the heavy hitters in Atlanta. That's around the time where AG was there. Real people from Atlanta know Alex Gideon or know that name, right? All of that to say, I used to think it was a badge of honor to have like 100 unread messages, to have like 300 unopened emails, to have like a full voicemail box, to have a whole bunch of missed calls. That was a badge of honor because to me, it was a sign of busyness. Bro, as I get older, I'll be overwhelmed. I'll be like, why I got all these notifications on my screen? Oh my gosh, my email got a 99 plus next to it. Oh my gosh, let's filter out all these messages. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Notifications is not a sign of importance. You can value it that way, but that's not necessarily true. All right. You have to create boundaries around your time. Create boundaries around your time. As an entrepreneur, somebody who's grinding and has a couple of businesses, medicine ball, crab business, a little part-time hustle, right? I'm trying to get to it. Entrepreneurship can be very expensive, but I'm trying to get to it. All of that to say, you got to create boundaries around your time. Today is supposed to be a quote unquote off day for me. The younger version of me would want to just be in the pool and play video games and just sit back and chill, maybe have a margarita all day, right? But I realize that's not realistic to help me get to the places I want to get in the time that I want to get it in. I don't have a lot of capacity and time to do the podcast later on in the week. So it behooves me to go ahead and use some of my quote unquote off time to still get some things done. I'm still going to enjoy my time. Create some boundaries around your time, all right? Protect your mental space. Be careful with what you let into your mind and occupy your mind. I want to touch on it more in the spiritual aspect, but I'll touch on it briefly now. When I have something that's irritating my mind, I literally envision myself handing that thing over to God. I thank him for it and I pray and I keep it moving. Now, I'm going to be real with y'all. Sometimes it come back, but I just copy the same process and hand it over to God. And even if it's only for a moment, even if it's just for that time, I do have a sense of peace and I'm able to move by whatever is bothering me, all right? Let's go to the next thing. Prioritize ruthlessly. You got to ask yourself, what is the most important thing I need to accomplish today? Not 10 things, one thing. Steve Jobs. I'm going to mess this up a little bit, but I remember it was the guy from Shark Tank speaking on his relationship with Steve Jobs. And long story short, he said Steve Jobs would take 100% of his day and have it mapped out. And the 15% or 20% of the most important things would go to the top and everything else he would count as white noise. Steve Jobs. What is the most important thing you can accomplish today? Then focus on completing it. I call it chopping wood, right? Man, I'm better now, but even when it came to this video editing, I used to tell myself off the bat, like, yo, we don't film and we don't edit in the same day, bro. Now, mind you, I'm on my 14th video episode. I've recorded way more video. Even if we just want to look at it numbers wise, that's 14 weeks that I've had to practice with this video editing software, right? I had to chop it down though. I had to spend some time going to look at YouTube videos, learning definitions, learning a work process. I had to tap in people who I knew was already skilled at it. Tell them to let me know some things. Then it went from that to, okay, if you can record, we now recording and editing the same day. You got to prioritize ruthlessly and chop wood. Getting those small victories is going to build your momentum. All right. So, heck, if you're on a tip where you just like, I don't know, I'm going to reorganize my closet today. Bro, that might be a daunting task. You might need to focus on just getting everything on a hanger, right? Then move to the next thing. Prioritize ruthlessly, all right? Control what you can control. You can't control the economy. You can't control these people in office. Not just one person, you know what I'm saying? A mass effort can, but not one person. You can't control every single challenge. You can't control for people to feel, and this is something I'm working on, you can't control or expect people to feel the same way about things that you feel. Whether it's an injustice, whether it's a wrong, whether it's the way things should be done. I'm learning that the most now in business, right? That used to bother me a lot. I used to be like, yo, why is my business partner not mad about this? Why are they not? And then I got to the point where I was like, bro, it's not fair to expect someone to feel as passionate, bothered, happy, sad about something as you do. But the turn of that is, it's not reasonable for you to feel the same way about other things that other people feel, all right? Control what you can control, man. My dad says it, people say it all the time. Control the controllables, all right? What can you control? And I know it's gonna sound corny, and I know a lot of people say it. Your effort, you control how you look at it, your perspective, your attitude, and your response. These are things that you can control. Control what you can control. Tunnel vision happens when your energy is directed toward what you can influence rather than what you can't. Tunnel vision happens when your energy is directed toward what you can influence rather than what you can't. All right. Segment 4, moving forward despite the chaos. One of the greatest myths that I think is that successful people wait for ideal circumstances. That's not smart to think that way, all right? They move regardless. And I always talk about this. There's going to be uncertainty. There's going to be risk. There's going to be critics. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be obstacles. Even now, man, in my humble moments, I apologize to God for my arrogance of thinking that I was going to get into this crab business and immediately, and I ain't gonna say immediately be successful, but I didn't think that I would have the type of adversity that I've had to deal with. Just being an entrepreneur and something on this scale is something that is dependent on so many things you cannot control, i.e. Mother Nature, i.e. the rain, all right? If you wait for everything to be perfect, you'll spend your life waiting. It took me 3 years to get to a point to where I felt comfortable to get in front of a video and edit my own stuff and start posting and just being more out there. We don't never want to focus on the past or coulda, shoulda, woulda, but just for giggles, just to think about it, just imagine if I would have started video editing, not even posting. I'm not even talking about reach and audience, right? Just imagine if I would have started playing with video editing 3 years ago. Where would I be at just in that skill set alone? How many more opportunities and doors could that have opened for me as a business idea in conjunction with Medicine Ball, in conjunction with my other businesses? So keep that in mind, man. You can't wait for anything to be perfect. You'll spend your life waiting, all right? I saw somewhere where it was like success is the accumulation of failure after failure where you continue to keep going. It was something like that. Something like success is the accumulation of multiple failures where you refuse to stop. You have to take the next step. Momentum creates confidence. Action creates motivation. Keep moving, even if it's slow, right? If you old school player, you might say slow motion better than no motion, right? Even if it's uncomfortable, it's character building, right? Even if nobody understands your vision. Forward is forward. You have to keep moving, all right? Let's get into segment 5, the spiritual perspective. keeping your eyes on the target. As Christians, you already know where I'm going with this. The ultimate focus on keeping your eyes on the target is from Jesus, man. Let me give y'all a couple of situations. So I already kind of talked about music production. Being in music production, especially when you're dealing with, I've dealt with R&B singers and rappers, but I would say punch-in rappers. Y'all can look it up. Y'all probably know what it is, but I had been in situations where I would hear a beat on loop, and sometimes if the beat isn't even fully constructed, it would just be a couple of sounds from the beat on loop for hours. To the point where I learned to kind of tune it out, accept it as what the noise was, and still be able to take a nap in the studio, get some work done in the studio. That always stuck out to me when it came to my ability to focus when things seem noisy. That like, yo, being a producer and hearing stuff on loop and not necessarily subscribing to it, that kind of helped me with that. Another thing, and I want to be very careful with how I talk about this, I'm a part of an organization, a college organization, right? Nothing illicit, nothing illegal. Where there were processes, completely cool processes, right? Where I was expected to be in an environment where there was a lot of noise or chaotic. More specifically, a lot of people kind of giving me instruction of things to do. And what my job was, along with my brothers, what their job was to lock in on the voice of one person who mattered. And I'll call him my big brother, right? I don't want to use nothing that's going to get nobody, and we ain't doing that. But we was just looking for our big brother's voice. So there would be times when it would be very, very chaotic in that environment. And if we weren't paying attention to listen to the voice of the big brother would have been told us we can leave class or session, whatever you want to call it, right? We can leave class. But it was quite a few times where with the chaos and us not communicating that we didn't hear his voice. So that actually caused us to prolong our situation at class. But that's another situation that kind of caught me to lock in and focus when the noise is loud. Jesus, same thing. There are situations where you have noises and you have distractions and you have criticisms and you have oppositions, you have betrayals, pressure. And Jesus remained focused on his mission. And without getting too preachy, that's why I think that the Bible is very important. And I think a thing that a lot of people miss is, because I hear people say stuff like, oh, how could Jesus be human and be God? Like, that don't make any sense. Like, if he was God, same thing that the Pharisees and the religious leaders were yelling. If you're God, get yourself out of this situation. Why are you getting crucified? But what I think people miss a lot of times is that whole thing with Jesus was to be a model or a representation to us. So now when we as humans are like, how can God understand this? Or how can God, he's God. Why does he understand that? That's what Jesus was, showing us that he himself went through the same temptations, the same obstacles as a human, but still was able to stay focused and locked in on his mission. Hebrews 12:2. That's a pretty dope passage. It talks about fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. Notice the instructions. Fix your eyes. What else does fixing your eyes mean to do? To focus. Focus matters spiritually. Talk about something else. Peter, when he walked out on water, it was real interesting, and it really caught my mind that, like, when he was walking out on the water, as long as he was focused or locked in on G, and that's why the Bible is so dope. It's just like bar after bar. You know what I'm saying? If you're a rap person and people say bars, it's just bar after bar, triple, double, quadruple entendres, bro. Because even the whole thing with Peter focusing his eyes on Jesus and able to walk on water, what I took from that as somebody who keeps reading the Bible and stays in it is there was a bigger message there. If you're focusing on Jesus, just like people say, yo, I can do all things through God, but they forget, like, nah, you got to be locked in on him and walking with him and following what he's telling you to do. If he ordains it, yeah, you could do it, but not just on your own. I thought it was real interesting how, like, Peter, as long as he kept locked in on Jesus, right, he was able to walk on water. The moment he turned to the distraction of the waves, he sunk. He sunk. We often do the same thing, especially from a spiritual point of view, man. I had one of my cousins call me, and I'm listening to him, you know what I mean? Because I'm mentor to a lot of people. I try to help a lot of people within reason. But I'm listening to him saying that all this stuff was happening. His mom, who was one of my cousins, was diagnosed with cancer, and his baby mom was asking him for some money. And now, mind you, this is a dude, I love you, cuz, if you listening. This is a dude who asks me for bread all the time, right? But whatever. His baby mom was asking for money. His brother was asking him for money. He had something going on with his work. And I'm listening to him, and eventually he says, man, the devil is on me. So at that point, you know, as I get older, I have learned not to always interject myself into things immediately. So I continued to listen to him for a while. And we talked probably like 10, 15 more minutes. And I was like, you know, cuz, you mentioned that the devil is on you, right? I ain't hear you mention nothing about prayer. I'm always trying to talk to you about getting some scripture in. I always try to ask you if you want to pray on the phone. If you know the devil to be true, and you believe that the devil is real and he's on to you, like, how you trying to fight that by yourself? And a lot of times what the devil does, he just causes distractions, man. I realized early on, when it comes to the Bible, like, any divisiveness, like, oh, this means this means this. We got to be careful with that as believers, because it really just be a distraction, right? People be like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. No. Well, man, even if you want to say the Bible is a story, bro, honor thy mother and father. Most people can get with that. Don't sleep with your neighbor's wife. Most people can get with that. Don't steal from nobody. Most people can get with that. Don't kill nobody. Most people can get with that. Don't covet anything. Don't be envious. Don't be just. Most people can get with that. Let's not get so distracted by, and this is from a spiritual standpoint, the devil, that it tears us away from having an intimate relationship and trusting God, right? God is greater than the reality we're facing. And, you know, I talked about it previously when we talked about racing thoughts. You have to challenge some of these thoughts and challenge some of these things and take them captive, bro. It'd be a fight. Bruh, some days I got to get up and I just got to listen to some gospel and be singing that joint throughout the day, right? It's a battle. It'd be a fight, right? We can even hit with that. What's he say? Our battles are not against flesh and blood, but against the spirits and the principalities of this world, bro. So even from that, we have to realize I'm getting to a point, and it's not in our body. It's not in our, some people it's in, but I know for me, it ain't in me. I probably need to focus more on what I'm taking in, but just like, it wasn't initially in me. I'll say that, to want to get into the scripture every day. But I take hope and I thank God, because I got days where I get up and if I don't read my devotional, if I don't read my proverb, if I don't get my verse of the day, if I don't have a prayer, if I don't pray with my lady, I don't feel right. But you have to make a habit of doing that, just the way you made a habit of watching that TV series or going out and partying or drinking or whatever you doing, whatever you made a habit of. We have to understand and shift our perspective and our attentions from our circumstances to God's sovereignty. And this is real tunnel vision, this spiritual tunnel vision, right? The enemy can't stop you from your purpose, especially if God deemed it. It's done. And to be honest with you, God already said the battle's run against the devil. So we really just out here just playing in a game and entertaining stuff that we don't have to, right? They can't stop you from your purpose, but he can distract you from it. The enemy, all right? So stay focused, stay prayed up, stay grounded in God's word, and keep your eyes on the one who called you, man. Just like when I was going through my thing with my fraternity, bro, you got to listen for the voice that matters through all of the noise so that you can maneuver regardless of how chaotic things seem, all right? Let's wrap up today's episode. Remember this, man. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every distraction deserves your energy. Your purpose is too important. Your calling is too valuable. Your future is significant. Identify the noise, classify the distraction, keep moving forward. Most importantly, protect your focus and keep your eyes fixed on God. This has been another week of the Medicine Ball Podcast, Season 7, Episode 14, Tunnel Vision. Locking in when life gets loud. I love y'all. Until next week, if you know somebody who could benefit from this, like, subscribe, share. Please consider also checking out my social media platforms. Medicine Ball LS3 is my tag on the TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. All right. Until next week, I love y'all. Y'all stay up. This has been Medicine Ball with your boy LS3. Yeah. Thank you for watching the Medicine Ball Podcast. Like, subscribe, share, and follow. And remember to check out